What's up? It's me, Don Tolliver. If I could describe the Bose Ultra Open earbuds, I think I would describe it as very seamless. It can definitely be something that you can style. It's like earring candy. Check out Bose.com for more.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want your connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Old El Paso. Does game day hosting feel like an extreme sport? Not anymore. With Old El Paso, feeding your hungry crowd is oh so easy. Old El Paso's crunchy stand-and stuffed shells, bold seasonings, and squeezable sauces are fumble-free, flavor-packed, and perfect for cheering on your team. Football season is taco season with Old El Paso. Level up your next tailgate or watch party. Shop game day essentials at oldelpaso.com.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Looking for an easy workout? You're in the wrong place. Peloton Tread has what you need to challenge yourself. Need to be pushed to your limit? Their elite coaches will keep you on track to break past your goals. Whether you're looking to get stronger or faster, Peloton Tread has everything you need to become everything you want. Find your push, find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com to learn more.
At the Musial with Alan and Daniel, we'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, a Medlock 1. Coming to you Saturday morning, November the 2nd. We have flipped the calendar. Everybody that's got the Halloween decorations can put them away, and I can start getting my Christmas stuff out, which is probably more of a focus on what the Cardinals are doing right now. But before we get to the Cardinals, Alan, the World Series did wrap up this week. Overall, any impressions of that?
Well, disappointment. I felt like this was perfect timing for baseball to get the two coast team powerhouses, the big money spenders, you get Shohei, you get Judge, you get Betts, you get Cole, Rodon. I was excited about it, and I was like, this is going to be awesome if we can go as far as possible, which it didn't. And ultimately, even with some of the games that had the great moments, of course, with Freeman and Volpe and stuff like that, it was kind of a boring World Series. And even with all the great matchups, I'm disappointed. Like, my favorite time in sports are the Game 7s. Mm-hmm. And it means a lot as a baseball guy. And the fact that we didn't have a single one in the playoffs this year was disappointing, knowing that we had so many evenly matched teams.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was at least one Game 5, right, in the 5-game series.
Yeah, there was just one. Yeah,
it is surprising. I hadn't really given it thought, but it is interesting that nothing ever came down to that. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that baseball. Game 7's fine unless the Cardinals are in it, and then I'm not real fond of them. I don't. They're too nerve-wracking. But yeah, the series was. I know baseball would have liked it to go at least 6. and it looked like it was going to, right? For a few
Yeah.
minutes there.
Yes.
And I don't know, we're still talking what 18 years later about how the Detroit Tigers pitchers couldn't field the ball
Yeah.
in the World Series. And the series wasn't quite that much, but that one inning, I feel like that's going to stand out for quite
Oh
some
yeah.
time. That may be beyond Freeman's home run in the first game, maybe the defining moments of this series. So when there's a highlights or when you think back of this series, that may be what it stands out. And you're right, that's not what baseball wants. Baseball doesn't want, one of its, epic teams having this meltdown be the overriding moment of their
Yeah.
championship games.
Yeah. I mean, the great point. It's and that's the one that stands out. And that's, even being up 5 and to see how it happened, you're like,
Mhm.
but you can seal this away. And like as Kevin Millar said, don't let us win tonight. And you never know. And
Yep.
it was just to see him kick it away was disappointing. I read a great article, and I can't remember who it was, but it was basically the Yankees are talented, but boy, they're flawed.
Mhm.
And it was fundamentally they're not very good, and things like that. And I think when those are written after the fact, you kind of know it. But there was some talk of the Dodger game plan was to run on them at every chance they get, and they did.
Yeah.
And just to show that that advanced scouting can be pretty impressive.
Yeah. And I think it was Joe Sheehan's um newsletter. And, he pointed out that the Yankees didn't play real strong teams in the playoffs to get to the World Series, right? I mean, they played good teams, don't get me wrong, but they played
Sure,
Kansas City and Cleveland, who, didn't have necessarily the
both were
firepower.
considered overachievers.
Right.
Yeah.
And just didn't have the bats especially to keep up with the Yankees.
Hmm.
So I mean, obviously however you get to the World Series, that's it doesn't really matter. You got there and you're still one of the best teams. But yeah, and I watched the, kind of a super cut of that inning, and you could just see how that pressure built on them, right? I mean, they were making decisions that I just felt like they were so much in their heads especially
Yeah.
after Judge dropped that ball, that it was like, "Oh no, here they come. We've given them an opportunity," and then they tried to do too much, and it just continued to snowball on them. I don't know. It was you don't usually, because usually you see a meltdown like that, and maybe you get a couple of guys, and maybe they get a run, but at some point in time they you get that third out or whatever. And it just never came. And that was, I mean, a testament to the Dodgers, but also, just what the Yankees, didn't take the easy out sometimes, didn't make the play they needed to make, and it cost them.
Yeah, yeah. Not only does it stand out as being big in a Game 5 of a World Series, it also stands out as big as that's the Yankees.
Hmm.
Just because, not because of the some perfection factor or anything like that, but whenever they would make it to that stage, you could just see that you just feel the Jeter pull of those kind of things just didn't happen to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just weird to see that collapse and the caught in the glare of the moment for a New York team that's you historically didn't see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's to some degree, it's the fact that these guys haven't, the Yankees don't play in the World Series as much as they used to,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
I
It's true. They're
mean,
young. I mean, it's
haven't won since '09. I've forgotten when the last time they were there. Maybe have they
it
not been
was
there?
'09.
Was it '09? I was about to say
Yeah.
this. I think back about it. I think that maybe the last time they were even there. So, that's a long time. I mean, it's a long time for at a period, but it's a really long time for the New York Yankees, right? I mean, this is a team that kind of, at least in their history, has put the postseason dates on the preseason calendar, right? They're going to be there, and so it's really interesting to live through this time. And older people that are older than me remember, that gap in the '70s and stuff when they didn't make it back till '81 or whatever. Um, but yeah, I just or after '81, I guess, but it was in the '80s. But it seems weird to see a Yankees. And again, these were the top 2 payrolls in baseball. And, um, the Yankees showed up as such a flawed team, even though they have such a payroll. I guess it just, money doesn't go as far as it used to. I don't know. It's just, it is weird to see. I mean, when you have a team that is that good in that market with that money, you would think it would be a more complete team than it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it's always one of those that we, of course, with the spotlight you and I talk about, or the microscope you and I talk about a lot
Mhm.
of Mo. Are you ever amazed that Cashman's made it this far? Not because one, I think highly of him, but
Yeah.
in a market like that is so hot tempered, I've always kind of
Mhm.
wondered about that. I mean,
It
because that's a
yeah,
long time.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, it helps that they've been in the playoffs a lot, even though they haven't necessarily got that. They've run into some, Houston teams that, they've been really good. And there's definitely been, I've seen it on, online and stuff. There's definitely been a fan call for a change there,
Yeah,
at times, just like there had been, with fans with Mo. Um, I mean, it's definitely a testament to the fact that Hal Steinbrenner is not his dad,
yeah,
or I mean that George would have had 3 of them by now.
yep,
Um, but yeah, I am a little bit surprised because you wouldn't expect that kind of record in that kind of market to not at least somebody say, "Okay, we need to do something different," because this is not what the Yankee way is. Um, and maybe that's coming. I mean, we've seen what the Cardinals are doing now, and it took a really bad season and some fresh, some honest evaluation. And maybe the Yankees are going to get there too. I mean, it's easier to buy your way out of a situation when you're the Yankees. And so, they can also just go out and spend, $500 million on Juan Soto or something and try to run it back. But I would think that at some point in time, there's going to be some accountability there.
yeah, yeah, and that's the way that they approach this offseason will be interesting. And you know, the, you're right. I mean, I would think that probably Soto or bust and figure it out, and I'm not sure how much that improves them.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess they on the flip side, they'd say we have a little bit more fielding practice, and maybe then this
That's
team was
true.
good. Team was good enough to be there. Um, yeah, it's it's hard to know. I mean, it will be interesting to see how they approach this because I do think I know Soto came out afterwards and saying he was going to be available to all 30 teams. Well, not all 30 teams going to be talking to him, and it's got
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be.
That market is pretty dwindled down.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be what, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers if they wanted to, but I don't know that they would even get in on that depending with what they've got. And then
Yeah,
if
you'd think
some
that. Yeah, yeah, your New York teams, your LA potentially, and then if Toronto's as serious as they say,
Mhm.
that they've been in all the other free agents, possibly, but that's one that still would just blow me away if that were to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's a couple other teams that have some money but or are desperate enough. I mean, I don't know,
Well,
but
and it's one of those situations too, to where if it's 600 million, like's being reported, you kind of want the Cubs to do it because it'd be a disaster in a couple of years. You know what I mean? I mean, they may have to wear one if they're that close enough to a championship, which I don't believe they are. But
no.
they bring in somebody like that. I mean, it's the Soriano deal all over again.
Yeah, I can't imagine with yeah, I'd be surprised if the Cubs got in it because they've
Yeah,
they've kind of been a little bit hesitant on their payroll as well. It doesn't mean that they won't be part of the rumor mill, but I honestly, if Juan Soto's not playing in New York next year, one of the team or the other, I'd be really stunned because
agreed,
I just
100%
don't,
agree.
yeah. So, I mean, assuming he enjoyed the experience this year, which he seems like he did, um, but that's not only the biggest money, but it's also the biggest stage. So, and it'd be probably as much as we hate to say it, probably good for baseball to have a guy like that on in the biggest market, not don't let him go out to Anaheim,
Yeah.
and get buried out there like they've done in the past. So with the World Series over, um, the the Cardinals are able to start in on their actual roster moves. I mean, we've talked about the front office stuff, which didn't necessarily need to wait till things were done, but they actually got to start on their player movement as well this week, and they declined the options on Lance Lynn, Keynan Middleton, and Kyle Gibson. And I think in a totally different year and a totally different focus, all of those would have been kind of surprising. Um, I don't know that any of us are surprised about any of that this time around. I mean, maybe Gibson. I mean, were you a little bit surprised that they didn't go ahead and at least exercise the option on Gibson?
I was growing to that as well. I wondered, like, as we kept moving through, and we were just kind of on the first reporting and everything we had talked about was, yeah, they'll move on from everybody else. But then you start looking at the rotation, and you're thinking, well, they're going to need some stability, period. And I was kind of talking myself into thinking that Gibson may be the one to come back, because then they could turn around and spin it and see, depending on how the season goes, he's going to be a movable asset. So I was a little bit surprised. Nah, I wouldn't say surprised. I was growing to the fact that it wouldn't have surprised me if they kept him. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. But then this right here is kind of status quo, and we'll kind of see. My question to you is, I think it's easy. I think we're going to get this question a lot just because of the uncertainty. But does this signal anything more to you than just the fact that, hey, these are easy moves to make, or that you know that other things are lining up?
I think what it tells me is that the Cardinals don't want to be behind with their backs against the wall, and they don't want a full rotation. They want plenty of opportunities
Yeah.
for people to come in and pitch in the major leagues, whether it's McGreevy, whether it's Graceffo or somebody like that that comes out of spring. If they had exercised, you've got Gray, you've got Fetty, you've got Palante, you've got Michaelis, and you've got Matz right now, right? And that's
Yes.
assuming you put Matz in there. If you even bring back Gibson, you're already at 6, right? And even if you trade one person, you're not going to have a spot. I think now they can go into this winter, and if somebody wants Fetty or somebody wants Gray and Gray's open to trading, they don't have to feel like they need to make a move because they need to free up a spot. They can take the best offer. And if they run into the season with this, then Matz competes with McGreevy in spring, and of course Matz is probably not going to stay healthy anyway.
Yeah.
I think there's a really strong chance they trade Matz this winter anyway, just because he can be a reliever, he can be a starter, he's not a terrible contract. Somebody that's just looking for some depth might take him. But yeah, I think it was more about, in the past, they've wanted that security. They've wanted to know that they have this all covered. I'm not sure that they're worried about that as much this year. They're like, if we cover it, great. If not, it's just more time for development, because we're not worried about getting to 88 wins or whatever like it we usually are. So I guess if I was taking anything away from that, it's probably that there's a little bit of a change in how they look at this roster this year, which is that's what we expected.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of thought the same thing, especially considering that you're just kind of cleaning it. One, yes, the reset, whatever they're going to call it, was going to happen. I think we knew that even after seeing I think you could have seen it even looking back to last year when they signed everybody to 1 year plus, and then you control the options. That told you a lot. Palante probably moved the needle a little bit by reinventing himself, so to speak, and moving into the rotation. Because it's funny. I don't know if you and I had brought him up at all the last 2 shows. And I thought about it whenever the projected rotation came out. I was like, well, you know what? You're probably not any worse than you were last year.
Yeah.
And if Fetty pitches to any expectation that you thought you had coming over, well, you're actually going to be pretty competitive if you keep him. So then it kind of goes into that second conversation you and I did have last week about, if they're going to give these younger guys a shot, spring training could be interesting because that's going to open the door for rotation spots for some of the younger guys. And all that being said, I do kind of wonder what it does happen with Michaelis, or if they do feel like that he's untradeable, or B, just stable enough to where he can get him innings all year. I don't know. The mind's kind of racing right now, and I feel like that's how everybody kind of feels, just to see what directions this does go. And I feel like they're going to do what they can to be competitive. I haven't convinced myself yet that that's just not the overly optimistic outlook. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's another thing to where I also haven't convinced myself that that all of this that's going out media wise, and all the signaling they're giving, is not just an excuse to not don't drill us if we're bad, because we kind of told you that could be the possibility. I hope that makes sense, but I think that I think that's kind of, I feel like that's some of the signals they're sending of behind closed doors. They're thinking, hey, we can probably still be a little competitive in a division that's not very good, or hey, if we're bad, we told everybody we were anyway, so we don't lose.
Yeah, I think that helps. I don't think season ticket holders can come along at the end of next year if the Cardinals win 75 games
Yeah.
and say, I feel suckered. I mean, you should
Yeah.
know that's a possibility, even if
Yeah.
it's also possible that they win 85 games or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I agree. On Michaelis, I know that there's some underlying numbers, and maybe his FIP was better than his ERA and other things like that, but I just have significant problems believing that the Cardinals could get rid of him and I just don't think there's any point in paying $10 million for him to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And get some guy that we're never going to hear from again.
Yeah.
And even that you might have to pay more than that. So I think by the end, it's just sticking there, but be willing to move him to the bullpen, or, cut his innings some, or do something. I don't know that they're going to be committed to him being a guy that takes every start next year and pitches 200 innings, even though it's what he wants to do. I don't think that they're going to look at that. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, would we be surprised if we saw some, more times, not consistently through the year, but more different, times through the rotation that they use six guys, and letting people develop a little bit more? I don't think that'd be a surprise at all. I don't think they're going to do it all year, but we saw it a couple of times this year, right? That they ran through, and, because of people coming off the injured list or whatever the case may be. I wouldn't be too surprised if they don't, if there's a tough stretch without any, then they run a 6-man rotation for a couple of weeks. And, even that just takes a couple of starts away from Michaelis. So, but yeah, I mean, if they can get rid of him without having to, pay more than half the salary, and they actually get something for him, great. But I can't imagine it.
Yeah. It's tough to see. And then, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of those that, I kind of like the Marmal situation. I felt like there was there was probably going to be a Marmal situation just to separate from the Mo era, and that didn't happen. So I don't know how substantial that they actually feel in that, and that if he's not going to be the scapegoat of a rotation of, hey, we're going to Mike Leake you to bring in some of these younger guys. That's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for me to believe.
Yeah. And I mean, if they do trade Sonny Gray, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about their focus on veteran leadership last year, but there is something to that, right? So, I mean, having a guy like Michaelis, who has openly said he wanted to take on the Wainwright mantle of being that kind of leader of the rotation, even if he didn't have the results. I mean, there's some value to there. Is that, especially on you've only got the rest of the year or something like that. And, who knows? I mean, he could come out and pitch, league average or a little bit better next year. And if he does that as your fifth starter, I mean, it's not the worst situation.
No, and I've always been a fan, of what he brings and all that. So, there is. Well, I don't want to use I don't want to use the term stability there, but let's put it this way: it brings a body that's pitched big league games.
Yeah, and if you're looking for better draft picks, maybe he helps you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, but again, I mean, I think it's just going to be really kind of interesting to see how they do look at this, right? And what developing players means. Are they going to, I mean, Gordon Graceffo has pitched in Memphis for 2 years now, not necessarily with huge success, but he has pitched there 2 years. Is it a time where it's like, we're really interested in throwing him into the fire at the major league level, because if he's not going to make it, we need to just kind of figure that out now. You've got, actual prospect like Hintz that's probably not going to come up till later in the year. But, do you see them throwing some young arms out there that have been in Memphis for a year or two? And it's like, we can't do anything more for you there. We'll just, we'll see if we can get anything for you now and use this year as a development year for our real prospects in the minors.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an element that will bring energy in that. And we'll see. I saw some of the 40-man ramifications of some of the guys that are going to have to come along, which means they're going to be just a call away.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we're going to see I think that we will see some fairly big names from the prospect list make rotation starts next year. And that's, I don't know. That's pretty exciting. And I feel like that's going to be a way to energize things again. That's not the humdrum what it has been. Back to Gray. I mean, he probably has the highest value of anybody tradable right now, I would think, but I don't know why. Helsley. I feel like he may stay.
Helsley's probably got more trade value than Gray does, probably, I would think.
Well, I mean, the only reason here's the thing: Gray's salary is decent. For what he's going to bring. He's a good number 2 for somebody that could win right away. I would think Helsley probably does have value, but I think that the combustible nature of being a closer, I think that you expect just that 1 year. And I'm not so certain. I'm starting to wonder if this could be dicey. I'm starting to wonder if they don't hold on to him till the break anyway.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least that was the plan. Except now the Dastardly Desk Clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want your connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
I think I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either, but I don't know. Not that they could have traded him a week ago anyway, but the more I think about it, and I was like, this seems like be a slam dunk. And those are the things where I felt like we could have predicted those things 10 years ago. Hey, that's 100% what's going to happen. I don't think they signal that as much as they used to.
Well, and with Heimblum having more control, we still don't know enough about him and how he's going to work, right? So I think there is a lot more uncertainty. I just, in theory, yeah, I get it. You go to the break, and somebody's desperate for pitching, might overpay, but you know, as again, then you're only getting 6 weeks of Helsley before he goes in, assuming he stayed healthy and assuming he stayed dominant, which he's not going to be as dominant as he was last year. I mean, that's just nature of the beast, right? Um, but if you trade him now, you get all these clubs that think they're in contention or think they can be in contention if they've got a closer, um, in a little bit, and they get a whole year for him. So I wonder if the price would be all that different. Trading him now versus trading him later, and then you don't have the risk. So, I mean, again, I don't know, but I'd be stunned if they held on to him.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the wrong case. And if he got hurt in May, would definitely be the wrong case, right? And we
Yeah.
know Helsley's had health issues, right? I mean, he was healthy last year, which is great, and then nothing that's necessarily recurring, but it is a pitcher. You just never know.
Yeah. And I think that's the gamble. That if you
Yeah.
you hold on to him and yeah, I think there's a big time that I think that's the gamble is not only just health, but returning to that form that closers most of them don't.
Right. Yeah. I will say, Gray's contract is, since he's and I really don't know why they did this because it didn't really make much sense, especially the way they did it. He got 10 million last year, but he gets 25 million this year and 35 million next year. And I mean, that's still not terrible prices for
Yeah.
a one or two. Well, 35 million might be. Plus, he's got that club option for 27, which is probably a 5 million buyout if you unless he's been successful, and then it's $30 million. I don't know. I think that would hamper. I'm not that you can't get a lot for Sonny Gray. Don't get me wrong. I just I don't know. Maybe you would because he's a starter. I maybe he is the most valuable piece, but I have a feeling that I think Helsley might be right there. I don't know. That's an interesting conundrum, and hopefully, but again, Gray's got that no trade clause. It really feels like you're going to be limited on what you can do with Sonny Gray, right? Because he's probably going to kind of demand that if you trade him, it's going to be to Cincinnati or Atlanta or something like
Yeah.
that. And we saw with Nolan Arenado what happens when the market is pretty much one team. It doesn't necessarily return you what you want it to return you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's limited. Yeah. Especially that's
yeah.
because everybody but, well, let's just say anybody that we've talked about the Cardinals moving, they all are under no trade protection, right?
Yeah, I mean, any of those big
Great
contracts are under
Contreras
no trade. Yep.
and Arenado.
Right. Matz is the only person with any kind of contract that doesn't have one.
Okay.
Because even
Wow.
Michaelis has one.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is a bit weird because you and I remember it's not been but 5, 6, 7 years ago that for the Cardinals to give out a no trade was like almost impossible, right? And
Yeah.
now here we
Yeah,
are
they
with all
themselves in
these
this
people they
corner.
would like to trade probably, and yeah, they're all so stacked up. I wonder how much do you think it would change things if people didn't have that no trade? Do you think it would be like the Cardinals would just then start dealing off, or do you think they'd still be pretty hesitant to move those players even if they had the free reign to do so?
That's a good question. Just because I wonder how much to the middle they're willing to stay, but not willing to signal.
Mhm.
I understand that they're putting resources into the development just because they've been exposed and have shown that they've been bad about it because they've been cheap about it. All that leads to I do wonder how much to the middle they want to stay, and I don't. If you truth serum them, they probably don't want to trade any of the guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know if this excuse is going to be, well, they have the no trade protection, can't move them anyway.
I mean, yeah, it could be, especially if none of the players come out and say that they want to leave.
Yeah.
Right. Then it's like, okay, well, you know, we couldn't find the right match or something, and or they wouldn't waive their no trade, and so we didn't worry about it. And so I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's possible too that they use that as
So
a cover.
I don't know how freewheeling they would be if it wasn't a contract. You know what I mean? That's that's
Yeah.
what I worry about.
I honestly don't think they would be because they've talked about it, and I get it, but I just can't imagine. They've said St. Louis can't handle a rebuild, and I kind of agree. I don't.
Agreed. Agreed.
As much as we know that they need to be doing what they're doing now, I don't know that it does them any real favors to strip things bare. I mean, yeah, you're going to get another, but you're looking at 2 or 3, 4 years down the road then before you're probably competitive versus being, you know, at least mediocre this year, right? I mean, and mediocre could be within a few games of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then possibly contending in 26. So I don't, I, yeah, I'm, because I'm just, unless my opinion has been on all these guys, unless they want to be gone, the Cardinals are not necessarily going to be looking to move them. I mean, I'm sure they'll listen on these guys, and if they get
Yeah.
such a really great deal, they might go to them and say, "Hey, we can do this if you are, or if you're open to it." But I don't think it's going to be okay, we're going to trade this guy. Let's see what we can get kind of situation.
Sure. And on a competitive nature, just like that St. Louis can't handle a rebuild, which I completely agree with. The do you which tells me Fetty is back, right? He's not one of the names that get moved, or I think, or are they going to listen on everybody? But my question is, as the rotation is right now, it doesn't look much worse than it did last year, and that's mainly because of what Palante did. And you're thinking, well, you could probably get what you did out of him last year, which was actually kind of saved him from a poor offense anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I do wonder, is he going to be one of those moves that his contract is very movable and cheap, and does that open the door for another young arm?
If I'm the Cardinals, I'm trading Fetty, because, like you said, cheap contract, had a good year. I think we have seen what happens, at least in Cardinal history. Doesn't necessarily go all the way across the board. But I think about Miles Michaelis. I think about some of these other ones that had a really good first year after they came back from the Asian leagues and then struggled their second year.
Sure.
I think you sell high on Fetty, even though he didn't have the best time in St. Louis. It wasn't bad. And, obviously his time with the White Sox was great. I would move him because I think you could move him, get some sort of reasonable prospect. I mean, not somebody's top prospect, but somebody that, has at least a major league potential, and not have to pay any of that contract. That being said, I'd also be a little bit surprised if they did that because Fetty has a good contract. I think in the past we would say the Cardinals really wouldn't entertain that, but like we said, things are different now.
Yeah. And that's some of the uncertainties, just seeing how different things are going to be. Has any signaling at all made you think that Arenado may be on the block more so than we thought?
I mean, Denton's out there banging that drum.
Yeah.
But I take anything that John Denton has with silo assault. I don't think the Cardinals have done anything. I don't think Nolan has done anything. But everybody's been pretty quiet too. So I'm not saying that Nolan's not going to be traded, and I know I have bias here, but I just think of how hard he tried to get to St. Louis, and the fact that he could still easily be under contract when the Cardinals are good again. That I'm just gonna kind of feeling that he's not gonna let him. I think he's gonna say no. I want to stay here. I may be wrong because like Denton says, he's getting longer. He's getting closer to the end of his career. If he really wants to win a World Series, maybe he does. Try to push himself to New York or L.A. or someplace like that. But I also, there's no guarantees, right? I mean, he could have been in New York this year and he would have been in the World Series, but he wouldn't have won it.
Yeah.
If he'd been the Dodgers, would the Dodgers be what they were? Who knows? Probably. But I don't know. For me, I think he's going to stay, but I can understand why people
Yeah.
wouldn't.
With
I will go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, MLB Trade Rumors put up top 35 trade candidates, and 7 of them are Cardinals, which is, and that's not even including, they mentioned JoJo Romero being a trade
Yeah.
guy, and he wasn't even listed. He was just kind of mentioned in passing. But it's Helsley, it's Fetty. Let me scroll down here, but it's a Nolan, Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras. The names we knew. There was a couple though. I guess the other one, Brendan Donovan, was on their list, and Nolan Gorman was on their list. And said neither one of those are necessarily have to be, but Brendan Donovan, neither one of them are. They're still in arbitration era. I think Gorman's still pre-arbitration actually, and but they're young and they're valuable. And if you are looking to restock a minor league system, does a guy do either one of those kind of guys make some sense to trade?
Yeah. Yeah, it would surprise me with Donovan due to the flexibility, but that's the second time I've heard that already because Kevin Wheeler was talking about it as well. Now, he may have been talking about the list. I don't know. But, and I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I could see that argument. If you truth serum the Cardinals, do they want to trade Arenado? And let me back up the argument. Yes, he may be there on the backside of the rebuild, but wouldn't you say at this point, I know this sounds kind of silly, but isn't he kind of some of the reason that they have to rebuild anyway?
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I mean, somewhat fair. I mean, yeah, obviously the real reason is because they've let their development slack, and that didn't necessarily have anything to do with him.
Which is true. Yeah.
But, Austin Gomber turned out to be a better pitcher than we thought, right? I mean, he's still in the major leagues. Could he, and he, not pitching in Colorado, would he have done better in St. Louis, especially if he'd been developed better? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think, boy, and again, it's hard to know. I think that still with the DeWitt's in charge, they still like those Hall of Fame level players.
Sure.
And so I think on that scale, they would probably not want to trade Nolan. And the fact that they would probably wind up having to eat a good bit of the salary and stuff like that. If they're going to pay him, they might as well pay him to be a Cardinal.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're looking at it in some ways, it's like, okay, but if we freed up even $10 million of his salary, and then you can put Nolan Gorman back at third, does that help Gorman? Although I don't think positionally, being the position is not Nolan Gorman's problem.
Sure.
But you could do that and, cover that spot. I mean, there are advantages to trading Nolan, but I still think when it comes down to it, the scale for the Cardinals would be to keep him.
Yeah. I just, I wonder that just because going into 34, it's 34-year-old season.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I would like to see them keep all 4 of them.
Sure.
But if there was one that I wouldn't mind seeing traded, it would probably be Arenado. And I say that just for that reason of the age base and that's going to free up a spot for some other people. And it's going to be a drop off defensively. We know that, but there are names in place that could take those spots.
But I mean, they get that. And that is absolutely fair. I just, And it also, we don't know personalities behind the scenes because there could
Sure.
be a desire on the part of especially the DeWitts to get Nolan Arenado to the World Series. Now we haven't seen that push over the last couple of years, so maybe not. But there could be a point where it's like, okay, we want, this is our guy. We're going to do what we can to get him there. I guess if I was picking one to trade, and I'm kind of like you, I don't really want to trade any of them because I think there's value. But if I was picking one to trade, it would be Contreras. I like Contreras. I think he's brought a lot of great stuff, and he's not necessarily had the easiest time in St. Louis. But when you look at Herrera and Pages, especially Herrera, you look at what you could probably bring back for a Contreras, who's on a fairly good contract as a catcher. He's also 30 or so, and as unless you're Yadier Molina, that starts to get a little bit worrisome.
Yeah.
I think all in all, again, not wanting to, but if I had to pick one, I think that's where I would go because I think that the drop off defensively, I know Herrera had issues this year, but they all did. And the bat was significantly better than Pages, who is seems to be like a really good ideal for a backup catcher. So if you have Herrera and Pages, I don't think you drop off just a ton from Contreras. So that would be me. But I understand. I mean, there's a case for all of them, right? I mean, there's a case for every one of those guys to be traded, and there's a case for every one of them to stay.
Yeah. It's true. And I think it's going to signal more of the Cardinals' intentions than anything when we find out who is leaving, who's staying, and all those good things. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of wondered about that. And we're going to have these conversations that are just going to be a revolving door, especially because, next week, we may find out a lot more. I believe the GM meetings are this week.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere in there. I think they are. And we'll see. I mean, what comes out of those. I mean, we're not terribly long, we're a month away from the winter meeting. So, and, non-tender deadlines in there and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things. I think that if the Cardinals wind up trading all of these guys, that it's more about the payroll than it is about the development.
Yeah.
It's their chance to try to reset that.
Yeah.
And not worry about, having to be successful. But if they trade all four of those guys, I think the next year is going to be hard. I think if they want to kind of thread that needle of being somewhat competitive while still developing, they've got to keep a majority of these guys. And I think that's what they want to do. So we'll see. We'll see. Cardinals actually made a move this week, yesterday, picking up Roddery Munoz off of waivers from the Miami Marlins. It's that time of year where it's the first move of the winter. And it gets overanalyzed to death, right? I mean, we talked about Jacob Young and there's somebody else first off last year. I can't even remember now. And these guys that never play, they might not even make it to spring training. So it's hard to say, oh, let's really do a deep dive here.
Yeah.
It seems like a guy that has an arm but doesn't know where it's going, and maybe you can fix that, maybe you can't.
Are we going to see a lot of these flyers taken?
I don't know. Maybe I could see that. I think, and it's interesting, right? I mean, if you start seeing, like last year, everybody they signed had a sweeper, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, if you start seeing them take a whole bunch of flyers on strong arms that have control issues, do you start thinking, okay, they have an idea of how to approach control now that we've got Heim Bloom in charge of development and all that kind of stuff? They've got a better idea of how to implement something that works for these guys. I don't know. I think that's the thing, right? To see these in the lens of normal, you kind of dismiss it, but as this is kind of the first signings we're seeing of maybe of things that they wanted to, kind of that, change in development. I don't know. It could be interesting.
Yeah. I just I wonder how much of a low key off season we're in store for. Yeah, or these kind of moves gonna have us scratching our heads, the whole time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I'm terrible about forecasting these type players.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we never know. I mean, we think that, hey, this guy could be something, um, and it never turns out to be anything, right? I mean, more often than not, these guys are Memphis filler. Might get a little bit of a chance, or like I said, there's sometimes that they get removed from the 40 man over the winter and never get a chance to play with the Cardinals at all. So,
Yeah.
Munoz has been on a number of teams. He's had a little bit of major league experience, not much. Um, I mean, we have nothing else at this point in time, so anything kind of gets latched onto. I think if this was the 6th or 7th move of the winter, nobody would even probably hardly notice it. But since it's right out of the gates, as soon as the first, it's the same day that they're declining options, or the day after they're picking this guy up, you start to wonder if there's some sort of plan there, or if it's just hey, this guy looks like he could be depth piece, let's just grab him now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, there's no telling, and I just wonder if we'll see a lot of those for that same reason, and it's going to be more of the mo of Bloom than Mo, and we start kind of figuring that out a little bit. I don't know, that could add a wrinkle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially when they're not 40 man guys. Now this one went on the 40 man, but if you can you can sign some of those guys to minor league contracts or something like that, then yeah, I absolutely expect all that. I mean, there comes a point where 40 man roster is limited, so and they've got a few people that can come off. They're going to have to put Takoa Roby and Tinkins on for sure.
Yeah.
This year, I think maybe one or two others might get added, but I think after we did this whole thing last year about the roster and looking at Rule 5, we kind of realized that a lot fewer people get put on the 40 man to protect for Rule 5 than we might expect, because people don't really take that often. Oh, it worked for the Cardinals this year. Ryan Fernandez was quite a pickup.
They're very true.
So, and I
Yep.
guess that will be kind of interesting too, right? Will they try that again this year? Well, I mean, that's just they did the year before with Wilking Rodriguez, and it didn't pan out because he was hurt. And then it just didn't pan out because he got released from the minors this year. But Fernandez hit, and that was in theory one of Heim Bloom's inputs. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see here what December. I guess it's at the winter meetings where they have the Rule 5. If the Cardinals take anybody, and if so, what that means.
Yep. Yeah, very true on all of that, and then see how much of the scouting and everything Bloom has done. In the off season when he was doing his evaluation of the organization.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's probably enough out of us for today. Unless you got
One
something else.
question for you.
Sure.
What are the odds they give Goldschmidt the qualifying offer?
Oh, none.
0.
Yeah, I mean, it's $21 million. I mean, it's close to what he was making anyway. And
Yeah.
Goldschmidt takes it, right?
See, that's the thing, is I wondered if an element of a take and a trade situation was enticing at all, or you just worry about the sunk cost. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that there's people. I think there are guys that can fill that role fairly easily and maybe should. But I did kind of wonder if you feel like the 4 that are coming back have stated that they wanted to do this, and they were willing to roll the dice with some of the younger guys, and you didn't look too different from last year. If it's not something you do and say, hey, it's a 1-year walk away deal.
I mean, I think if they were thinking that, they wouldn't have already told him
Yeah,
that they weren't going to pick up.
that's a
They
good
weren't
point.
going to do that. They kind of made their peace. I mean, I get it, but yeah, I just no. I think from a fan standpoint, if you're going to take them at their word, and say that the money that they're saving on major league salaries is going to the development, um, then you wonder why they're spending $21 million
Yeah, good
on
point.
a Goldschmidt. Even if he can bounce back and all that, that's just not where the focus needs to be. So,
The money that you essentially saved by not bringing the pitching back,
right,
you dump into a qualifying offer.
right. And I mean, Goldschmidt's not going to get. I don't think he'll get 21 million on the free agent market. So, even if you tried to do if he offered it and he took it and then you tried to work out a trade, you're still probably going to eat 5 to 10 million of it, and
Yeah,
that's just $5 or $10 million you didn't have to do. So, yeah. And I hate it because I mean, we've
agreed.
talked about it. We want.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I'm right along with you. I mean, it's one of those where, yeah, I'd love to see the corners stay the same next year, but I've gotten to the point with everything that's been signaled about how it's going to go that I kind of want to see that first and third be different this year.
Yeah. Um, I think it's an interesting discussion maybe to have, and I think the guys on Talking Birds mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Does Goldschmidt's going into the Hall of Fame? I think we all kind of assume that. Does he go in as a Diamondback? Does he go in as a Cardinal? Does he go in as a blank cap? I think, I mean, he won his MVP with the Cardinals, but I think it's really hard to say that he overshadowed his Diamondback years here.
Yeah, my gut feeling would be a Diamondback.
Yeah, I mean, which is, I know the Cardinals, again, they like their Hall of Fame players, and they'll, he's claiming him in anyway, but yeah, I think that's interesting, and you won't have and he probably won't have a retired number for him,
Yep.
because they've said they've changed that up a little bit too, because they didn't retire Scott Rowland's number when he went into the Hall of Fame. They've kind of changing their criteria a little bit. So yeah, it was not. I mean, the goal, and people have, I think, will probably seen, and especially if Nolan gets traded this year, we'll talk a lot about it. But the Goldschmidt Arenado era just was not what we expected, and I don't really want to get into that with 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
That maybe we can save that for next week when there's less of an issue. But I think it would be interesting to talk about that time that those guys had together and what it was and what it wasn't. So maybe we'll table that until next week. So
yeah.
We do have another history moment from Remembirds, so stick around for that. Alan and I maybe be with you next week. We'll just see how it goes. If there's more news like there was this week, we'll be with you. If not, we'll be back before Thanksgiving for sure. So until whenever, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
This episode is brought to you by Old El Paso. Does game day hosting feel like an extreme sport? Not anymore. With Old El Paso, feeding your hungry crowd is oh so easy. Old El Paso's crunchy stand-and stuffed shells, bold seasonings, and squeezable sauces are fumble-free, flavor-packed, and perfect for cheering on your team. Football season is taco season with Old El Paso. Level up your next tailgate or watch party. Shop game day essentials at oldelpaso.com.
Prep for Thanksgiving at Whole Foods Market. Save now on no antibiotics ever frozen whole turkey, just $1.49 a pound with Prime. Sales on brie and select seafood appetizers help get things started. For sides, go with wallet-happy favorites from 365 by Whole Foods Market. And finish with decadent desserts from the bakery. Or get your whole spread catered. Just order early. Get Thanksgiving ready at Whole Foods Market. Terms apply.
Hi, guys, and thanks again for having me. Now, today, I'd like to take a look back at Johnny Keane, who managed the Cardinals from 1961 through 1964, culminating in the 1964 World Series championship. However, a few days after the series ended, Keane announced his resignation at a press conference that Cardinals chairman Gussie Busch had initially called to announce that the Cardinals were signing Keane to a new contract. Keen's 35-year career with the Cardinals included time as a minor league infielder, player manager, and coach before he joined the big league coaching staff under manager Solly Hamas. When Hamas was fired in 1961, Keen was named manager. After a rocky few years under Hamas, the Cardinals players were delighted to have Keen in charge. In his autobiography, Stranger to the Game, Bob Gibson said that Johnny Keen was, quote, the closest thing to a saint that I came across in baseball. In his own autobiography, Jack Buck declared that Johnny Keen was one of the nicest persons ever in sports. The Cardinals responded to their likable manager, and after winning 84 games in 1962, they won 93 games to finish second in the National League in 1963. With high hopes for 1964, however, they got off to a slow start and were just 30-31 by June 17th. With the club in 8th place in the 10-team National League, Gussie Busch fired general manager Bing Devine. Rumors swirled that Keen was next on the chopping block, and they only grew more intense after former Cardinals shortstop Leo DeRocher, who had won National League pennants as a manager with both the Dodgers and Giants, appeared on a Cardinals pregame show. When Harry Carey asked DeRocher about his future as a manager, DeRocher said, "If somebody came to me and asked me to manage a team with some talent on it, a team like the Cardinals here, well, I'd jump at it in a minute, because a team like the Cardinals should be winning." The next day, Gussie Busch instructed Carey to bring DeRocher to his estate at Great Grant's Farm. According to DeRocher's autobiography, Busch offered him the job but wanted to clear it with Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley, who had DeRocher under contract as a coach. O'Malley was on safari in Africa, however, so Keen remained in place. In the meantime, Keen and the Cardinals rallied. By September 22nd, they were in 3rd place and were within 5 games of the Phillies for the National League lead. Even as he managed the Cardinals back into the pennant race, Keen was aware of Busch's meeting with DeRocher and begun to make his own plans. As he later explained, Keen's decision to leave was based on an accumulation of things, including the Cardinals' courting of DeRocher, Devine's firing, and the presence of senior consultant Branch Rickey. On September 28th, Keen wrote a letter of resignation and held on to it, planning to deliver the letter to Busch whenever the Cardinals season ended. Only his wife knew of his decision. As Keen planned to move on, however, Busch's feelings toward his manager changed as well, as his ball club kept winning. After an 11-5 win over the Mets on the final day of the regular season, the Cardinals clinched the National League pennant, finishing 1 game ahead of the Reds and Phillies. The Cardinals went on to win a classic 7-game World Series over the storied Yankees, with Bob Gibson pitching the Cardinals to the Game 7 victory. The following morning, Busch called a press conference at which he planned to announce a new contract for Keen. Instead, Busch was in for a surprise. When Keen arrived 15 minutes before the press conference was scheduled to begin, he handed Busch the letter of resignation he had written weeks earlier. Unaware of the contents, Busch shoved the letter into his pocket and encouraged Keen to hurry toward the waiting press. "I think you'd better read that before we go in there," Keen said. When Busch said he would read it afterwards, Keen insisted. That was when Executive Vice President Dick Meyer asked to see the letter. After quickly reading it, he stopped Busch and told the beer baron, "We can't go in there." When Busch asked why not, Meyer answered, "He's not going to manage. He's resigning." "I'm sorry, Mr. Busch. I've made other plans," Keen said. Though Busch was stunned, the press conference proceeded, only it was announcing Keen's resignation instead of a new contract. It marked just the 3rd time in baseball history a manager had guided his team to a World Series title and not returned, and it was the first time it had happened since Rogers Hornsby was traded from the Cardinals to the Giants following the 1926 season. A few days later, Keen was named manager of the New York Yankees. Unfortunately, his tenure didn't last long. Saddled with an aging roster that was on the decline, Keen guided the team to just 77 wins in 1965, and after they won just 4 of their first 20 games in 1966, he was fired. In January 1967, he suffered a fatal heart attack and passed away at age 55. Following Keen's resignation, Busch faced public perception that he and DeRocher had chased Keen from St. Louis. Rather than hiring DeRocher to fill the void, he sought recommendations from a committee that included the recently retired Stan Musial. Musial campaigned for his longtime friend Red Schoendienst, who won the job. Schoendienst went on to manage the Cardinals for 12 years, guiding the team to another World Series title in 1967 and the National League pennant in 1968. So that's a look back at how Johnny Keen managed the Cardinals to a world championship and then quit his job the next day. For more Cardinals history, visit stlredbirds.com or follow me on Twitter at @remembirds, REMEMBIRDS. Thanks again, and go Cards!
throw. Deep left. Has he done it? Goodbye! A grand slam to end the night.
2 fastballs and decided to go breaking ball and hung it. What a night for the St. Louis Cardinals, coming all the way back. Down 2 in the ninth to Devin Williams to tie it. And a walk-off slam